Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here with us today. We apologize for the slight delay, but we are going to start with our presentation. The topic, as you know, is emerging technologies in planning and smart cities. We have two great speakers with us today. I am just being your moderator. My name is Margarita Iglesia, and with us are Isra Banks, who is a graduate from the Master of Architecture program at the BAC, and she's also today part of the faculty, and she practices as well. Since her graduation, she has become a registered architect, NCARB, and lead accredited professional. And in her presentation today, Isra is going to build upon her research and graduate thesis on the topic of smart cities and sustainable design. She also will bring perspectives from her professional experience as founder of Tribeca Architects. With us is also Abdurrahman Medalla, who is the general manager of Sharqiya Development Authority, and he's going to bring to us a presentation on plans to create a new city in Saudi Arabia that is intended to be smart, sustainable, and a source for economic development. His presentation will illustrate how the concepts of smart cities and emerging technologies are being applied to design the city of the future. But before I transfer you to our speakers, I'm going to introduce a few introductory slides just to bring up the topic. Please bear with me while I share my screen. I believe you can see my screen now. And, cities are growing. We have passed the threshold where half of the world's population is living in cities, and the trends for city and urban growth continue as the population grows. Recently, I attended the National Planning Conference, which was held last month. And there were very interesting discussions about what are the future trends in planning and in urban development. And I'm borrowing this image from one of the presentations by the APS research director, Petra Hurtado, that showed all those topics that we care about. And one of them is smart cities, is artificial intelligence, demographics, urban air mobility, transportation, climate change. So with all these big challenges, how do we gather and convey all this information technology that is developing? And as our previous speaker mentioned, it's going to be instrumental in shaping the future. How do we bring them to the city? And I thought just briefly to introduce a definition of what smart city is, although, it's nothing new. It has been around for as long as the internet has been around, and I'm sure that you all know about it. But I thought that the IBM definition is important because IBM was one of the pioneers that started to invest in developing these technologies and even had plans to create a new smart city in Europe as a technological development center and research and development center. So the importance is to gather and use all this wealth of information technology and big data that we have in our hands to make our cities and our planet better. However, one of the controversial aspects as we talk about smart cities and as we develop these technologies is how will the human factor be represented in this technological world? And it's not only something that applies to smart cities, but to the internet and to all the information that we share through the internet. Who controls it? Where is privacy? How do we keep our democracy, and how do we make sure that all citizens have a voice? So the presentations, ISRA presentation is going to touch a little bit on these issues. And then we will see how this is going to be applied in a new city in the Gulf region. But with this, I'll stop sharing my presentation and pass the mic to ISRA. ISRA, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Margarita, for such an amazing intro and setting the stage for our presentation. Thank you, everyone, for listening. So today we are talking about smart cities. And what smart cities? Do we just connect everything to the internet and voila, we have a smart city? What are the problems that we are trying to solve here? So our 20th century city was shaped by the Industrial Revolution, but our 21st century, what's significant about it is the information technology revolution. And what's happening right now? What happened to what can we learn from what happened into the transition from the 19th century to the 20th century? We got a population increase, we got natural resources depletion, and we have a higher demand on financial resources. And we got a whole new set of problems that we need to resolve before they are there. So what are the problems that we currently have and we are going to face in the near future, and how are we going to solve them? This is what I'm going to talk about today. So our current problems are human health issues, pollution, growth of populations and overcrowding of cities, population ageism, and traffic congestions. If you live around the suburb of a city, let's say New York or Boston or Chicago, or even Abu Dhabi, clean air, social justice, and as Margarita was talking about, privacy is a very big issue, whether we're using technology or not yet in that process. And then lack of connectivity. So, and what is the 21st century bringing to us? And bringing to us a whole set of new technologies. We had previously, we leaped from the not using the internet to using the internet. We got exposed to all this great information. We're talking to each other through these awesome applications like we're doing now. We're doing video conferences, we're doing everything. Now the next step, we're going to have everything connected to the internet, which is going to require 5G networks, a higher level of internet speed. So you won't see that yellow button on my screen next time. And then we're going to have the big data. Big data with the availability of 5G network, we're going to be able to collect more and more data about our health, about our politicians, about pollution, about all the problems I've mentioned earlier. Again, the Internet of the Things is going to take the big data, all the information we collected, and help us regulate all these factors. We're going to be able to control traffic. We're going to be able to control the environment, or microclimate, and climate environment. I'm gonna talk more and more about these issues. So, to make things easier, I'm going to tell you about Ashley. Ashley is a millennial. She lives in a suburb close to the city because she does not have the means to rent an apartment or buy an apartment in the city where she works. Ashley got recently divorced. Ashley has a 4-year-old child to care for. Ashley has asthma and some other health issues that make her vulnerable to pollution and mold in some buildings. Ashley needs to provide her family. Ashley needs to take care of her mom, who's also suffering from health issues. She's in her 80s. She needs also to be checked. So she wants to do all that at the same time while being a single mom. Ashley commutes to work, spends 2 hours a day to commute to work. Ashley worries about the safety of herself and of her 4-year-old child, and she needs to reach out to her mom and her child within 10 to 15 minutes in case of an emergency. But she lives far away she works far away in the city. She lives in the suburb. So can we help Ashley solve all these problems? And this is a typical millennial 21st century, we're still in the early 21st century. What can we do to solve all these problems? So let's think of a first question. What kind of density, what kind of urban density that would be more suitable for Ashley? And first, what are the real needs for Ashley? How can we boil them down to a criteria and find out where can she live, how can she provide, how to improve her economy, her finance, how to improve our city's economy, how to get Ashley pay less bills. I personally looked at Manhattan, Vancouver in Canada, Port Igo, which is gone. It's a 20th century city that was made to house, that was meant to be affordable housing. And then Somerville, which is growing in the suburb of Massachusetts and being connected to the city. And then Reading, Massachusetts, where it's a real suburb, where the density is 3,000 people per square foot, compared to Manhattan, 71,500 people per square foot. So comparing all these cities, we found that in Manhattan, people although they have good proximity, but they have social withdrawal because of issues of noise and overcrowding and a lot of stimuli around them. In Vancouver, they have good proximity and fair privacy and high diversity due to the high population. And then in Port Igo, they lacked everything because why? Because of segregation, simply. They were economically cut. They were set to fail. No integration with nature, lack of diversity. It turned out to be a city of drugs and criminal actions and cradle for all criminal activities. Somerville have good proximities close to the city, 18,000 people per square mile, and have good sense of privacy. Although I've talked personally to people living in Somerville and they were craving even more privacy, although they like the proximity to the city. And then the little diversity of uses, still there's commute, little integration with nature. So we know that this sort of the Vancouver setting, where we have 13,000 per square mile, good integration with nature, good proximity, mix of uses, a lot of diversity, all kind of ethnic food you can reach out, is a place that can help some of the problems, but how to bring that setting to the 21st century or the future of the 21st century. So we know that we don't need we need more social interaction, more social connections. That's not good in low density. We need, remember again, Ashley needs to be close to her friends. Someone needs to look after her child or her mother. She needs to call a friend if she was away, if she was on a business trip. In the suburb, we still have lack of diversity and lack of connectivity. Same thing in the urban developments, we still have lack of integration with nature and lack of privacy. So why am I talking so much about privacy? Well, and what does that privacy means? Privacy means you are not forced to use the same way again every day again and again. You need options. You need a clear demarcation between what's public and what's private, so people cannot get intruded. Intruders cannot come in and play in your backyard. You need to know that this is your backyard, and this is the shared place, and this is the public place. There's this experiment in New York University, in Stony Brook University, Long Island, New York. They found out that students the same students who lived in this sort of setting, they were facing each other, they're sharing common area, they grew to be hostile against each other. They did not like each other. After they graduated, they did not talk to each other. While when they gave them more space, not necessarily space, but more options and each student have 2 entries, 2 doors. They had options to use whatever way they want to use every day. There was clear demarcation between public and private. They grew to like each other. They developed wonderful friendships and did have staying connection after graduation. So how to bring these qualities to our cities and our urban developments? So I'm setting, for the 21st century solutions, I'm setting passive and active solutions, because if I'm going to say, we're going to use the technology to solve all our problems, that's just like putting Band-Aid on a cancer patient. If we don't know exactly what these problems are, and we don't try to solve them in design ways, passive ways, and just enforce the technology, it's just like we're working as marketing agents to tech companies. We don't want to do that. We want to find genuine solutions that would help Ashley live, and her mom and her child live a better life. So we need to improve connectivity. We need to offer a shared public space so people can meet each other in a safe environment where they are watched by others. This is a passive way of safety solutions. The street, the public place is watched. We need to provide places for walkability, because Ashley wants to bike, wants to walk, so she can preserve a better health to serve her mom and her son and herself and have a better life. We need diversity. That's when we're mixing the functions, have diversity of people. Ashley loves her friends from all ethnicities, from all backgrounds, and what the technology is doing for us in terms of proximity and diversity. That information, we actually can now go with these screens, with all the information shared about politicians, she can go to these screens set up in the cities, kiosk. She can press and learn about what taxes her representatives are paying, what's their financial income, what their views, what they're doing. and she can make better choices to vote for who she likes. And then there's this transparency of economic and political data. And then with the use of technology, we can regulate traffic. We can use the big data for better connectivity, because we can tell people to, slow down, use this way, not use that way. We can open, and we have lots of choices. With privacy, we're offering solitude, feeling of identity and ownership, freedom of making choices, hierarchy of privacy levels. And then nature, we don't need to forget about nature. We need views, vegetation, natural light, and natural means of thermal comfort. And then we're monitoring carbon and emission levels, and monitoring indoor air quality, monitoring energy consumption. All these are, in the bottom, are active solutions that the technology is going to help us with. So this is an example of a vehicular network, another example of bicycle network and race paths. So Ashley can pick whatever she wants, whatever suits her that day, after she checks the internet or the internet kiosk that tell her which way is easier for her. Instead of spending 2 hours, she can spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get to work. These are self-driving cars and have intelligence. Artificial intelligence, you can just tell them where you want to go. They will take you where you want to go. And then traffic control with all these monitors, with all the security cameras that's collecting information, you can regulate traffic. With privacy, we can use noise control. We can use sidewalks. We can use different types of privacy levels as, shared yards that need to be taken care by the community, private yards, and then semi-private. These layers of privacy are going to ease and improve people's life. Completely isolated from strangers, courtyards for children to play with neighbors again. It would be very nice for children to meet their neighbors and play with them, as we probably did, or the prior generation played with children outside. Cyber information security is also important. So in Russia, they gave people the option to see politicians and public figures, finances and tax returns and views, but at the same time, they give people the option to, private citizens, the option to select what people can say and can see and what they cannot see. So each citizen have the right to preserve their privacy, because they're private citizens. They're not public figures. They're not using the government's resources. So probably most of you are familiar with mixing the uses leisure, retail, working, living. That would make the city more accessible and everything accessible. Mix the uses. Again, Ashley can take her son just going down a couple of flights to Starbucks and Panera and have lunch, or maybe meet her mom there. Again, mixing the uses. Have a diversity of age. To have a successful city, we need this city to be like a successful financial machine. We need people from all ages to be working and serving each other. I don't want to send 55 plus people outside the city into some resorts where they cannot interact with their grandchildren, with their young adult children, or their teenage grandchildren. We need cities that take all ages into consideration. This will help diversity of...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's time to wrap up the main idea of the topic. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the main idea, I'm going back to where I started. We can use views, and we can control the weather with the big data and information technology. We can make sure that the air is not polluted. We can provide views and natural light. And then to preserve the environment, we collect garbage through these awesome networks. Ashley does not need to go outside to take out the garbage twice a week. She can just use a garbage chute in her apartment that goes directly is connected to the garbage collection facility. I'm going to stop here and wrap up. The future cities need to lost my train of thoughts. Need to be compatible with our 21st century needs, not the 20th century needs. We not only need to overcome the problems that we have created in the 21st century due to the Industrial Revolution, but not start over, but resolve these problems and use the technology to help, not to create more problems. So thank you.
With this, thank you, Isra, very, very much. And with this, we pass the mic to Abdurrahman Medalla.
Thank you so much. So it's really good to be back here at the BAC, at least virtually for now. I'm very glad to also participate in BAC talks. It's been like 10 years. I'll begin my slides and I'll take you through it. Abdurrahman Medalla, again, I'll introduce myself. I'm currently the general manager at the Boston Architectural College. Sorry, at the Sharqiyya Development Authority. I still feel that sense of belonging to the BAC. Let me pick up my slides. Give me a second. There we go. All right. I hope that you guys can see my slides now.
Yes.
Excellent. So let's start this. This is a poem by His Royal Highness Prince Khalid and Faisal. This poem he's written roughly around 4 decades ago, and I've added my translation to it. I know that my translation will come a bit shy and short of the linguistic beauty that comes with this poem. So basically, the translation goes like this: don't ask me why I am a lavender admirer. If you know me, you'll know the secret of my adoration. My origin, my house is of wool, and the desert is my family's home. My rug is the land, and my ceiling is the sky, and its soil is dear to me. While Saudi Arabia is widely known as a desert, in spring it becomes covered with blankets of lavender flowers. Recently, the Ministry of Culture announced a replacement of the colors used in the royal reception rugs that are traditionally red. And it's been replaced with these purple rugs inspired by the lavender. And it's also inspired by the sewings and the patterns and markings that are seen in the patterns that are used in tents, old tents that were made out of and woven out of camel wool, known as the Sedu and Sedu art. In last month, this purple rug basically welcomed foreign delegates visiting Saudi Arabia. And also recently, the government lifted off the travel restrictions that followed the stalling pandemic of the COVID-19. Just months before the pandemic, Saudi Arabia, and unfortunately, have been putting off the traveling into Saudi Arabia. But just before the pandemic, it was announced that there are new policies that would allow people from across the world to visit and explore Saudi Arabia as tourists to meander around the various unexplored sites within the country, something that was a bit difficult to do in the past. This policy is one part of a complete national transformation scheme with objectives to be met by 2030. The National Transformation Program, that is led by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, stood on 3 pillars: a vibrant society, an ambitious nation, and a thriving economy. Here from Al-Ula, a hidden oasis in the desert, surrounded by sky-reaching plateaus, Prince Mohammed carries on in this picture his day-to-day activities next to his next to his wool-woven tent, and his rug is basically the land, and the ceiling is the sky. This is a view of Al-Ula, a pristine scene that brought together a thousand-year-old farmland and fringes of scattered urban development. Al-Qiddiya is another part unknown, west of the capital Riyadh. It's an extension of the Tuwaiq Mountains. Al-Qiddiya is planned to have exploiting plans to become the capital of entertainment, with Six Flags like theme parks and Formula One swivels. The Vision 2030 transformation comes in to take the country away from a long dependency on oil as the one contributing sector to the economy in the kingdom. The frequency of major developments in Saudi have been a mirrored reflection of the oil prices and the national revenue generation, as well as the gross domestic product and prosperity. Over the years, the kingdom tested multiple development types. I have always been keen on examining these different prototypes that have historically been introduced to the kingdom. On the left is one of the cities that was part of a chain development that was planned for a decade ago. It is perhaps the only well-known city now that is still marching towards its plan, the King Abdullah Economic City. In the middle, we see the industrial city in Jubail, on the opposite side of the Arabian Peninsula. Was developed in the late 1970s. And to also compare, on the far right is Riyadh city. As a matter of getting an understanding of the scale of these developments, Riyadh city or King Abdullah city and Jubail Industrial City makes for somehow 50% of Riyadh city. And Riyadh is recognized as one of the rapid developing cities around the world, and perhaps the largest in terms of flat land size. These are renderings that are made by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill for the King Abdullah Economic City. On the right are recent pictures of the city, and the plans by SOM that the city would have a central business district and that are yet to be built and to lead the city towards its plan. King Abdullah Economic City is a large footprint. Roughly, it comes near to the size of Singapore on the right side, and then it's perhaps 2 times the size of Manhattan. It is widely known that cities in Saudi Arabia are somehow large in its footprint and very low in its density. And the diagram here shows how roughly the second column from the right side that has all the Saudi cities in a lineup. They compare and how they compare to the other international cities and how they are in fact larger in their footprint to other global known cities. Al-Hufuf is one of the cities that has a history in the Arabian Peninsula, more than a 5,000 years old oasis. And just over the past 20 years, it faced a challenge, an invading urban population. So this picture on the left now is from 1985. And we see on a 10-year scale how the city became. The urban development roughly now amounts for around 60% of the developed area, while the agricultural area is basically less. So one of the latest attempts by the kingdom was enlisting a policy to protect the agricultural land. And Al-Hufuf became a recognized UNESCO site now for 2 years ago. The kingdom also announced a global mission to contribute to the green economy and to counter pollution. So a large initiative that was just last month have been announced and led by the king himself, the Saudi Green Initiative. And some of these targets are to increase the share of the renewables in the kingdom, to reduce the carbon emissions, to plant over 10 billion trees over the next few decades, and then to raise the percentage of protected areas to more than 30%. One of those ground zero sites is the urban edging old airport in Riyadh. It makes for a big and a huge percentage of the city. It's almost a 6 kilometer by 6 kilometer site. that for more than 40 or 50 years have not been completely developed and not completely utilized. The plan is to build on top of it the King Salman Park. So the site is expected to house new urban development patterns, enriching the city with walkable networks. And walkable networks is basically an absent figure in the city today, and to have lush parks and so on. The new urban development are meant to repurpose the name of the city itself, Riyadh, which translates to the gardens in the desert. The Saudi vision is transforming with one, upping the non-oil revenues, but also several other factors have been somehow touched, such as the lifting up the happiness index and the infrastructure index, and some of the subjects that Isra has been talking about in her presentation. For example, introducing the internet to multiple users. It reached to roughly around 97.8% in the country, and the digital infrastructure at large as well. But one notable mark is the turning of underdeveloped assets into an investable one. And the case in point here is basically the public investment fund. So there has been several companies sort of formulated to deliver that objective. So PIF was able to lead the transformation with instituting and channeling various assets and capital investments into companies that contribute back into the economy. And most notably is NEOM. NEOM is a 500 billion investment into a digital city. The city recently launched a campaign around an advertising and marketing campaign for the city. And perhaps also branded one of its recent projects. The project is called The Line. It's a major spine cutting through multifaceted topographic layers, championed by a transporting spine. The Line, a 170 kilometer, and a potential off-grid city with expectations of having a zero energy, with 3 layers that puts time as the prioritized resource for the next generation city. And it basically breaks down the layers as this. One, the first layer, a pedestrian layer that is free of cars. The second layer is the service layer. That's where all the businesses and retails are. And then the third layer is the spine layer to transport both goods and people. So my position now of the city is that I am, and perhaps the vision at large, is that I am ambitious for things that are happening in the kingdom. But as an architect and an urbanist, I'd like to take more authorship into the process. And I advise to do that. And I have used this diagram several times. I like it. It's by Bruce Ma. And I try to work by it as well. I think that basically it shifts the responsibility of designers from being service providers to taking more authorship into leading objectives of transforming cities. Bruce Ma himself was influenced by Arnold Toynbee, and this is a quote that I have captured from both. It goes like this: the 20th century will be chiefly remembered by future generations, not as an era of political conflict or technical invention, but as an age of which human society dared to think of the welfare of the whole human race as a practical objective. And I feel
Thank you, Abdurrahman. I'm sorry to interrupt. We are also here at the
this is
time of
basically
wrapping
my
up the
last slide,
presentation.
No, absolutely. This is my last slide. I'll just go quickly mention it. This is one of the basically projects that I've worked with during the time back at the BAC. It was called Off-Grid Grid. And at the time, it felt like it was a less ambitious project, but I've learned a lot from it, and I think it becomes much more relevant now, and it brings back good memories as well. So I want to wrap it up here, and thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much to both of our speakers today. And we are coming close to the end of the session. I've been looking through the chat and I don't find any questions, but I would like to ask both of you, what do you think that are the opportunities to work on developing all these ideas about smart cities here at the BAC?
Is this question for me or for
both, for any of, or how do you think that we can advance all these ideas in practice, and especially here at the BAC? Do you have any suggestions or views about the future of these ideas?
So from what I see at the BAC, I think students and faculty are both doing an amazing job into addressing social justice and sustainability issues that we're going through, and the ones I even presented in my presentation. But what we need to work more on is preparing students for being a bit more bold and aggressive in the business world, where they can reach out to legislators, and they can talk more about these issues and bring them out to the public. They can be connected to business people and developers who fund these projects, and raise this awareness and the importance of these problems and these issues. So we can do bit, probably there's no too much research, but what we actually need, the most pressing issue, is having architects and planners bringing the research and all the work that we are doing to the business world, to the development world.
Thank you, Isra. What would you say, Abdurrahman? Do you have any thoughts or suggestions?
Absolutely. So one thing that I've done a while back at the BAC is to lead several community projects that the students worked on. And, after so many years, I still find what the BAC has is something that is completely absent in few other opportunities. I think that definitely distinguishes the BAC among other schools. This basically this infrastructure that is in place to have students participate in community projects, and this focus on the practice side should not be undermined. And I've concluded my talk with one of these attempts that was basically, or at least at the time, you think that it's a student project. But I've learned a lot from it, and most of the students and the research that they've did, I capture some of this information still in practice today, as a person who's leading some of these initiatives on a public sector level. So yeah, I think that's an interesting thing about the BAC, and that it should be capitalized on.
Thank you very much, Isra. Thank you very much, Abdurrahman, and our audience. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you so much.